Picture this. It is early March 2026. A tanker captain in the Persian Gulf receives a radio message, not from the U.S. Navy, not from his shipping company, not from the Coast Guard, from Iran. The message tells him his ship has been identified, his ownership has been verified, his cargo has been logged, and if he wants to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, the 21-mile wide waterway that his entire voyage depends on, he will need to pay $2 million per crossing. Welcome to the Strait of Hormuz in 2026, a waterway that has carried 20% of the world's oil for decades, a passage that 138 ships crossed every single day before February 28th, a channel so critical that when it closes, the global economy doesn't just slow down, it bleeds. Iran closed it, then turned it into a toll booth, and the rest of the world is still figuring out what to do about it. Think about what that actually means. Before this war, 138 ships crossed the strait every day. Every single day. By March 17th, just 17 days into the conflict, that number had collapsed to 3. 3. Not a reduction, a collapse. 15 million barrels of crude oil per day stranded. 4.5 million barrels of refined fuels going nowhere. Iraq's oil, Kuwait's oil, Saudi Arabia's oil, all of it sitting in the Persian Gulf with nowhere to go. Brent crude surged past $100 a barrel on March 8th, then 110, then 126 at its peak. The International Energy Agency called it the largest disruption to global energy supply since the 1970s oil crisis. Not the Gulf War, not the Iraq War, the 1970s. This is the weapon Iran chose, and for 30 days it has been working. But here is where the story gets interesting, because America did not sit and watch. My name is General Marcus Webb. I spent 34 years inside United States Army intelligence. I want to walk you through every layer of what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz right now. The weapons America used to crack it open. The mine warfare campaign that turned the world's most important waterway into a death trap. And how America is dismantling it. The toll booth Iran built. And the one thing the White House admitted today that changes everything about how this war ends. Let's begin. To understand what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz, you need to understand that Iran did not improvise this. This was 40 years in the making. Since the 1980s, Iranian military doctrine has been built around a single strategic assumption, that Iran cannot defeat the United States in a conventional war. But Iran can make the cost of fighting one so high that America chooses not to. The Strait of Hormuz was always the centerpiece of that strategy, Iran's nuclear option. Short of an actual nuclear weapon, the logic was elegant and brutal. Close the strait, and you don't need to defeat the U.S. military. You just need to starve the global economy until the political pressure forces America to the table. For 40 years, Iran invested in exactly the tools needed to execute that strategy. Iran's Hormuz strategy rested on 3 weapons working together. First, shore-launched anti-ship cruise missiles, hidden in hardened underground bunkers carved into the mountainous terrain along Iran's coastline. The Noor, the Qadr, the Abu Mahdi, with a range exceeding 1,000 kilometers, capable of striking vessels as far away as the Gulf of Oman. These missiles were buried under hundreds of feet of reinforced concrete and solid rock, designed to survive conventional airstrikes. They were supposed to be untouchable. Second, fast attack boats. Hundreds of IRGC speedboats operating in swarm configurations, attacking ships from multiple angles simultaneously, fast enough to outrun conventional naval responses, cheap enough to deploy in numbers that overwhelmed any single defense. By mid-March, Iran had confirmed at least 21 attacks on merchant vessels. Third, naval mines. Silent, invisible, deployed across the strait's shipping lanes to deny passage to any vessel that dared approach. The Maha-3 and Maha-7 limpet mines, designed to attach to a ship's hull below the waterline and detonate on a timer or magnetic trigger. The kind of threat that turns an insurance policy into a death sentence. These three weapons together created what military analysts described as a death valley. The fastest way through the Strait of Hormuz was straight into all three of them simultaneously. But Iran did something else that most coverage missed entirely. It didn't just close the strait. It weaponized it economically. In mid-March, the IRGC quietly opened a toll booth. Ships from friendly nations, China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Thailand, were offered passage for a price through Iranian territorial waters via a route running close to Iran's Larak Island, away from the internationally recognized shipping lanes. Lloyd's List intelligence tracked 26 ships using this toll route since March 13th. Some paid undisclosed fees. All had to submit documentation, crew manifests, ownership records, cargo declarations, directly to the IRGC. Think about what that is. Iran turned the world's most critical waterway into a checkpoint at which it decides who passes and who doesn't. A toll booth operated by a U.S.-designated terrorist organization, charging fees to access international waters. Today, the Iranian parliament is drafting legislation to formally codify this, to make Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz permanent law. If that legislation passes, it will be the most significant unilateral redrawing of international maritime law since the Second World War. For decades, the missile bunkers along Iran's Hormuz coastline represented an unsolved military problem. They were not just hardened, they were specifically engineered to defeat the weapons America had available. The GBU-28 bunker buster, America's primary deep-penetrating bomb since 1991, could penetrate approximately 100 feet of earth before detonating. Iran's engineers knew that number. They built their most critical facilities deeper. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, America's largest conventional bomb, could reach 200 feet of reinforced concrete. But there are only a handful in existence. They are reserved for the highest priority targets. For 30 years, Iran's coastal missile infrastructure existed in a gap between what America had and what Iran had built to survive it. That gap was closed on March 17, 2026. On March 17th, U.S. Central Command released a statement that sent shockwaves through the defense community. CENTCOM confirmed that U.S. forces had successfully employed multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions against hardened Iranian missile sites along the Hormuz coastline. The weapon, the GBU-72 Advanced 5K Penetrator, making its first combat appearance in history. Let's take a moment to understand what this weapon actually is, because the engineering is extraordinary. The GBU-72 weighs exactly 5,000 pounds, approximately 2,270 kilograms. It uses GPS and inertial navigation guidance derived from the JDAM architecture, allowing it to strike within a few meters of its target regardless of weather, darkness, smoke, or any other condition. Clouds don't matter. Night doesn't matter. Nothing matters. But here's the part that makes it different from every other bomb in the American arsenal. It does not detonate on the surface. It plunges through. The GBU-72's elongated steel casing is engineered to minimize air resistance and concentrate force onto a smaller surface area at impact. It penetrates 100 feet of reinforced earth, or more than 20 feet of reinforced concrete before its delayed fuse triggers detonation. When it finally explodes, it does so underground, in a confined space. The pressure has nowhere to go. The shock wave expands inward, collapsing the structure from within. This is not a bomb that destroys a bunker from the outside. It destroys it from the inside. Multiple GBU-72 bombs were dropped on the hardened underground caves along Iran's northern Hormuz coastline. The targets housed Iran's Nur, Qadr, and Abu Mahdi anti-ship cruise missiles, the very weapons that had turned every passing tanker into a potential casualty. CENTCOM's assessment: Iran's coastal missile stockpile reduced by 90%. 90%. That is not a wound. That is the destruction of a capability. Destroying the underground missile batteries was not enough, because even with 90% of Iran's shore-launched missiles gone, the strait was still swarming with fast attack boats, still seeded with mines, still a death valley for any tanker captain willing to try. Phase 2 of the Hormuz campaign was a different kind of war, not underground, on the water. Enter the A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, an aircraft designed in the 1970s that became a decisive weapon in a 2026 maritime conflict. There is a reason for that. It is worth understanding. At the heart of the A-10 is the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barreled 30mm rotary cannon capable of firing 3,900 rounds per minute. Its armor-piercing depleted uranium rounds can shred a fast-attack speedboat in under 2 seconds. But the A-10's decisive advantage is not the gun. It is time. The Warthog flies low and slow, at speeds that let it loiter over a target area for hours, not minutes. A fighter jet screams through and is gone. The A-10 stays. It circles. It waits. It watches. And when an Iranian fast attack boat attempts to deploy, it does not get a second chance. CENTCOM confirmed A-10s were deployed specifically to hunt and destroy Iran's fast attack boat swarms in the strait, operating alongside AH-64E Apache attack helicopters, using Hellfire missiles and their own 30mm cannons for coordinated kill chains against mobile targets. Iran's hundreds of fast attack boats, the backbone of its asymmetric naval strategy for 40 years, became the hunted. But the Warthog's secondary effect was the one that changed the mine war. While A-10s were airborne over the strait, no Iranian mine-laying vessel could operate on the surface. The mine-sweeping operations already underway became dramatically safer. Every hour an A-10 was overhead was an hour Iran could not reseed the channels being cleared beneath. The Warthog was not just a weapon. It was a shield. And then there is the piece of this story that points directly toward the future. On March 26th, the Pentagon confirmed for the first time that unmanned drone boats were actively patrolling the Strait of Hormuz during Operation Epic Fury. The platform, the GARC, a 5-meter-long autonomous surface vehicle produced by Maryland-based Black Sea Technologies, fully autonomous navigation, an operational range exceeding 2,200 nautical miles, capable of sustained patrol missions covering over 450 hours without a crew. Their primary role was surveillance and mine detection, mapping the strait's minefield from the surface, identifying locations for subsequent clearance operations. Their secondary capability. When directed, these vessels can be weaponized as direct kamikaze attack vehicles against surface threats. Iran had used naval drones to attack oil tankers twice early in the conflict. America's answer was to deploy its own autonomous fleet, but purpose-built for the Hormuz environment. Persistent, tireless, requiring no crew to risk. Paired with Royal Navy autonomous mine-hunting drones being deployed to the strait, designed to detect mines and trigger controlled detonations from a safe distance, you are looking at the future of maritime warfare operating in real time. No sailors in the water, no divers at risk, just machines clearing a death valley one mine at a time. So where does the strait stand today? Before the conflict, 138 ships per day. March 17th, the lowest point, 3. Between March 1st and March 25th, the entire first month of the war, a total of 142 ships transited the strait. 142 in 25 days, compared to 3,318 in the same period last year. That is a 96% collapse in traffic. Today the number is creeping back. A trickle of Pakistani ships, 2 Indian LPG tankers, 2 Chinese container ships, the first large vessels Iran has permitted through since the war began, passed on March 30th. 2 ships, in a strait that used to see 138 a day. The trajectory is upward. The scale of the problem remains catastrophic, and here is what was said today that changes the entire framing of this conflict. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked a direct question. Does Trump require the Strait of Hormuz to be fully open before declaring victory in Iran? Her answer: no. The strait is not a core objective. Let that land for a moment. The largest oil supply disruption since the 1970s. Gas at $4.02 a gallon nationwide for the first time since 2022. The IEA calling it a historic crisis. And the White House says reopening it is not a core objective of the operation. Separately, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said today that the United States would gradually take control of the Strait of Hormuz. Gradually. Not immediately. Not upon ceasefire. Gradually. Secretary of State Rubio put the clearest frame on it. He said the strait will reopen, quote, one way or another. Either Iran agrees to open it, or a coalition of nations opens it by force. What those three statements together tell you is this: the administration has accepted that the Strait of Hormuz will remain disrupted when the shooting stops. The war's military objectives, Iran's missiles, its nuclear program, its navy, will be declared complete. And the economic objective, the Waterway, will be handed off to a coalition that does not yet exist. Iran's toll booth may outlast the war that was supposed to destroy it. And here is why that matters. Because Iran is not finished. The mines in the strait are still there. Mine-clearing operations are underway, but they will take weeks, possibly months. Each mine must be located, identified, and neutralized individually. Some are contact mines. Some are influence mines triggered by magnetic or acoustic signatures. Some are designed to look like the bottom of the strait and require sonar to detect. Iran's drone production capacity has been degraded. It has not been eliminated. The Shahed-type kamikaze drones that have struck Gulf energy infrastructure, airports, and American bases continue to be produced and launched. And Iran just demonstrated something extraordinary. On March 30th, it turned away 3 Chinese ships that attempted to transit, to punish Trump for what Iran said were broken promises about releasing tankers. Then it allowed them through. Iran is running the strait like a border crossing, deciding in real time who passes and who doesn't, charging fees, punishing violations, rewarding compliance. A country whose navy has been declared combat ineffective by the U.S. Secretary of Defense is still operating a toll booth on the world's most important waterway. That is what 40 years of asymmetric strategy looks like when it partially survives a military campaign. 40 years. That is how long Iran spent building the weapon that closed the Strait of Hormuz. 40 years of bunker construction, missile development, mine stockpiling, fast attack boat procurement, asymmetric doctrine development, a strategy built on one insight. You do not need to beat the United States in a fight. You just need to make the price of the fight too high to pay. In 30 days, America and Israel dismantled most of that strategy. The underground missile batteries are gone. The Navy has been reduced to a shadow of itself. The fast attack boat fleet has been hunted across the strait's surface. And yet the toll booth is still operating. 142 ships in 25 days in a waterway that used to see 138 per day. What this conflict has demonstrated, for every military on Earth watching it, is that asymmetric strategy works, even when it loses. Iran lost the conventional battle decisively. It still holds an economic weapon that the United States has not yet fully pried from its hands. China is watching. Russia is watching. Every adversary that has ever looked at a choke point and wondered if it could be weaponized is watching. The lesson they are drawing from the Strait of Hormuz is not that Iran was defeated. The lesson is that Iran lasted 30 days against the most powerful military in the world and is still charging ships $2 million to pass. That lesson will shape the next conflict, and the one after that. My name is General Marcus Webb. If this analysis gave you something you weren't getting anywhere else, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next briefing covers the mine-clearing operation now underway in the Strait, the technology being used, the timeline, and why the British Navy's autonomous systems may be the most important military asset deployed in this entire conflict that nobody is talking about. I will see you there.